Welcome everyone to Awesome Truth, a wrestling book club. I'm your host, Steve Zamino, and with me as always is my co-host, Walt Schwenk. Hey, Walters.
Hello, Stephen. How's it going?
My friend, it is going very well. We are back on Awesome Truth, and we are talking about a subject that is near and dear to our hearts, Walt. I think it's near and dear. We've at least covered it pretty consistently for as we should, because it's like the TV show about wrestling, right? Like if anyone's going to cover this, it's going to be us.
Well, wait a minute. Young Rock has something to say to you about the TV show about wrestling.
I can't even think about Young Rock though as like and take it remotely seriously.
But you know who would have something to say is, I guess, Glow. But I guess they're not on.
That's
they're not
true.
active.
It's the
anymore.
active. Glow is the stirring. You know, the high end example of wow, a show about wrestling that is delightful. This show we're talking about today, less so, but it's back for season 2 anyway. We're talking about Heels. We've covered Heels twice before on the show. We did sort of a pilot, should you watch more of this episode? And then we did a season 1 recap episode. And now, despite the odds, it didn't seem like it was necessarily going to stick it. The ratings certainly aren't stellar, but in today's fragmented television world, it survived, and it's back for season 2. And we wanted to watch episode 1 of season 2 and sort of decide whether it's worth your time again. And
yeah, the classic Awesome Truth sandwich review, where we watch the first episode and the last episode, and then we kind of cram in all the middle into the somewhere in between. And
we pretend like this episode is necessarily a bellwether for other episodes, which probably isn't, for the season, which is I don't think is the case. We can talk about that in a little more detail, but this feels to me, Walt, and you've just watched this episode, and I've watched this one and episode 2. At the time of this recording, there are 4 available. I think there'll be 5 by the time this goes out. So you all might be way ahead of us in the Heels world, but we are slow and steady going through it. And I will say, episode 1 of season 2 feels like a reboot of sorts, a reload at least. Like if you listen to our old Heel season 1 episode from a few years ago, we very loudly wondered what the hell was going on. And with Ace Spade, one of the main characters, played by Alexander Ludwig, his allegiances are all over the place. His character's all over the place. He's sort of the crux of the entire show, and the choices he makes do not make much sense to the viewer. And I think this episode is a sort of a course correction, at least on his character, about really pumping the brakes there and saying, like, all right, let's take this guy off the show for a hot second. Let's move him at least out of the action, and let's maybe minimize all the ups and downs we had with him before, and try and make his conflict a little more central and a little more local.
I mean, this is a classic teen drama trope, which I'm not saying that Heels is a teen drama, but having watched a slew of CW and other shitty network.
You're a big Oth guy, right?
Huge Oth guy. Huge Oth man.
One Tree Hill for the uninitiated.
yeah, right.
We just call it Oth here.
Well, we won't get into that. That's a different podcast with probably different people. But I will say, though, that like it's a classic, like, break them up, and then at some point down the way we know they're going to come back, and it's just a function of how and why and yada yada yada. So it's not very surprising. That's kind of true to the form, and I half expected that Ace, given where we left off last season, that this would be the path. So, but then again, I'm only on episode. I literally just watched the credits a minute before we started recording of episode 1. So just got in right at the deadline, and so I don't know exactly where his character's going from here. This is the part where you tell me a little bit about how separate or how big is the breakup at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you're and a lot of shows beyond even just your Oths do what you're describing, like you come back with characters and they've all sort of moved on in their own way, and then at least the first couple episodes of the season are them reuniting for some combined reason. Let's do X, let's solve Y, and then that becomes sort of the idea of the entire season, is to accomplish that goal, new friendships, all that crap. This is so you're right, this is not super surprising they would split people up, but everyone else stays on the team. Like Chris Bauer, as you'll see in this episode, as Wild Bill Hancock, he sort of embeds himself even further in the team. The rest of the I'm trying. We joke that we're gonna have to do a lot of looking up what all these people are called, even though.
Nope, we're just gonna stumble. We're gonna fumble the ball a few times. The ball's gonna be on the ground, and we just got to dive on it. The best
well, of course, it's the Duffy Wrestling League. I don't know why I even paused there because obviously I know that like the back of my hand that it's the DWL.
We're in trouble, guys.
But everyone else in the DWL is still around. Like they haven't all left. They haven't parted ways. It's just Ace that's gone. So Jack is still there, Stephen Amell. So like it's not like the whole DWL has split up and has to reunite for one big show. That's not the gimmick they're doing here. Everyone else is still around dealing with the fallout of that of the season 1 finale, and now Ace is the one who's just in the wind.
I mean, wow, I'm really gonna show my my TV background with this next metaphor, but I mean, like
you're a producer. So.
Well, I've never produced off. I just watched a lot of it. The DWL is the Battlestar Galactica ship. There's always going to be a Battlestar Galactica for the people to come back to and fly around space, evading Cylons. And so no matter who leaves, someone has to be around to drive the fucking ship. Unless they do a new Caprica season where they just land on a planet and suddenly all the characters are now on a planet. Like unless they all join the Florida dystopian wrestling league, chances are they're always going to be. So there's going to be someone in Georgia to run the DWL to some degree, whether it's Ace or Jack or Crystal or Wild Bill Hancock. Is that even the right?
Or Willie, Mary McCormick's character, the business partner.
Yeah.
She's there.
Anyone. But it could be any of them.
The only thing I'll say that could be different is, there is a world where it's not like the Duffy Wrestling League is doing really well. Like there is certainly a storyline where it goes away and Jack and Ace in particular go get jobs at other companies, at other promotions. Or they struggle with what to do next post wrestling, which is certainly an angle the show could have taken. The one thing I'll say so far, having seen season 2 and episode 2 of season 2, which Walt has not seen. Well, and this is a little teaser, and it got me kind of excited. I don't want to ruin too much for you.
Spoil if you want. I don't give a shit.
No, I don't. I just don't want to give you. I will just say they seem to be doubling down on trying to make this fun. Season 1 was like, how do we put the pieces back together of, with Jack and Ace, of Dad who killed himself, and the promotion is in disarray. It never became big league. It never really sort of grew. And they're trying to, create something out of nothing and make this thing functional again. I think now where it seems like they're going is, let's have some fun with this. Like we ran a weird angle at the end of season 1 that made no sense and was very stupid, but They look like they're embracing the idea of okay, but it probably got people talking. In this world, in this internet wrestling world, if something like that happened, it's not that crazy. A woman won the title. That's not in 2023, not the most insane thing in the world. But it probably would have got a few people talking, and it probably would have built a little bit of enthusiasm. And they seem to be running with that idea as opposed to doing a lot of "woe is me, what are we going to do next" type things, which bodes well, in my opinion, for the show, because I think that then you get to actually have somewhat of a functioning wrestling promotion and have some fun with what you're going to do with your characters and your storylines.
I mean, didn't Impact do the same exact thing a few years ago?
Yeah, so that's why I don't think it would be. Another thing that I will say, and this is at the end of episode 2, a thing happens where I was like, okay, if that happened, that would be a genuine thing I would see on YouTube and be like, oh, that was cool. It's what they should have done at the end of season 1 if they wanted to pretend like this was a Impact moment, not pun not intended, that would get people talking. The end of episode 2 definitely has something where I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, they should tease the idea of this is wrestling in 2023. I mean, yeah, it's a territory, and territories are antiquated in many ways, but this is a YouTube era of wrestling, and there is money to be made for independents. I mean, we saw, just listen to our interview with the Bucks, and you'll find out that you can be very successful in the independents.
Or read Keith's book, Keith Elliott Greenberg, friend of the show, written all about the independents.
Exactly. So it's not crazy that this obviously there's financial troubles with a independent a promotion not part of this giant media conglomerate that can back them or save them or bankroll them. But like there's certainly money to be made and done in a way that makes sense for a contemporary organization. Like I think they should, I think they should really be exploring the technology and the new age way of wrestling in the independent scene. I mean, that could be something they could double down, and I would see that being more interesting than just like Georgia wrestling and all the town folks show up to this every week for the wrestling. It's like, yeah, I know, but like, there's ways to make money outside of just like 100 people showing up to your damn like warehouse every Friday.
Yes, I will say, and I'm sure we mentioned this in our previous Heels episodes, season 1 definitely seemed like it wanted to have its cake of being a wrestling show and then also eat it too by being a Friday Night Lights style family, Southern, culture type show at the same time. And I don't think that was a successful pairing. I think that probably could be a pairing in some universe, but I don't think Heels nailed it. I think it just felt a little more scattershot. And again, I think I get why if you're trying to make that kind of show, you do the storyline of sons try and put their father's wrestling promotion back together. Like I get why that makes a lot of sense. Is like this is the first part of this story, but I think that's just a boring part of the story. I think it just doesn't. If you cast like Cracker, if you like do Friday Night Lights and you nail the casting so well, and you're melodramatic, but you're also heartfelt. Like if you could somehow get that tone perfect, I can see why that would be a great combo. I think a lot of shows since then have tried to do that and failed because it's really hard to do. And so I think Heels does not have the actors remotely as good as on Friday Night Lights. And I think it just really fumbles when it's trying to show the hardships and the struggle. And that's why I'm hoping in season 2, they're like, you know what, let's put that on the back burner a little bit. Again, let's send Ace off and do his own thing for a while. And let's focus on having some fun with the wrestling side of things. Because certainly, I have to imagine their audience is you and I and other nerdy ass wrestling fans, right? Like,
right.
Who are there 78,000 people watching this show?
Great question.
It's called Heels. It's not
yeah.
Friday Night Lights, and just names alone, I think, imply something about what kind of show you're watching.
Well, the one thing I will comment on is like I don't think it's like a bad angle to take, the Friday Night Lights angle. The problem is Friday Night Lights exists and was excellent, and this is like derivative because I know that that's a part of this where it's community focused and it's like a way of life, but like at the same time though, like wrestling, like regional wrestling is not like obsessive in the way that Texas high school football is obsessive and like kind of a weird subculture that like everyone kind of gets around. I mean, you could tell me that and I wouldn't be like, oh, you're full of shit, but I just
it would ring less. It's way easier to buy with a Friday Night Lights for sure.
Well, there's also just the fact that like in wrestling in general, like there's always a separation with the audience, like, and because of that, like there's always like at an arm's length with like the community and the fans. I mean, like, and so it's a really, really tough thing to try and nail tonally. Like, oh, we're gonna be the Friday Night Lights of wrestling shows. It's like, all right, well, good fucking luck, man. Like, that's really like. Yeah, I want to be the Sopranos of, I don't know, like amateur weightlifting. But that's, on paper I get it, but that's really hard in practice. So
and it's probably a good way to sell your show in the room if you're like a writer or showrunner guy. You can probably, I'm sure that gets people to buy it, but then you have to actually execute on it, which is a lot harder.
That was probably the part of the pitch, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
oh yeah, you loved it. I'm 1,000% sure that was the initial idea. Is Friday Night Lights wrestling?
Watch the graphic open.
Yeah, I was gonna say, listen to
open.
The first note I sent to you about this episode is, God, this Friday Night Lights ass intro is back, which is just so not. It's just not the kind of intro you'd expect from a wrestling show, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be a wrestling show, but I think it's a reminder that season 1 strived for something a little different that I don't think season 2 is going to strive for.
Well, I mean, I hope not, because now at this point we know the characters, we know the backstory. I mean, the first episode, to your point, you said it was a reset. It was, like, to me, it was more of a retread, and like, because we only got the kind of the conclusion of the fair in the last few minutes of the episode, and the entire meat of the episode, the season 2, episode 1, is just like, hey, let's revisit how we started down this road in the first place, the day the King of Spades,
Daddy
shot
Spade,
himself.
that character we all love, Tom
Kingy Spade.
We loved Tom.
Kingy
What if we loved
Spady.
Tom's actually a really shitty, mean man. So.
Sure. Right. Well, in any case, so we're just revisiting like what's effectively like the Brian Pillman Memorial episode, where we remember how Ace got into wrestling, and the town, what was supposed to be the last in a very Stampede Wrestling storyline. It was supposed to be the last time they ever did this, and then the Bruce Hart of the world decided, you know what? Let's just keep going. Let's just like keep doing this thing.
It is very Stampede-y. That's a great point.
So I just drew like 10 parallels in that one.
No, you're right. It is more of that. And I will say one thing season 1 did that we've never like talked about, but I've sort of thought about in the spare moments I think about heels, which is rarely, but in season 1 they build toward. Correct me if I'm wrong. Well, you might not remember this either, but I'm 99% sure that at some point near the end of the season we learn that the dad killed himself. I don't think that's, or at least we see the suicide. I believe there's like a scene outside where you literally see him like sort of go outside and just do it seemingly out of nowhere, and it's a very like intense and very well done scene from what I remember. I remember really liking it, and they show it basically again in this episode. But I remember like you wait a while until you get there. Like you don't really see the horror of it until, and then like you said, we don't really see the aftermath of it at all until this episode. I think that's some real peak TV bullshit. Like I think that's a problem a lot of shows have these days, is they sort of backload in season 1 a big thing that happens, when as just give me the stuff off the top, like give me the action right away. Like give me a reason to like these characters. Don't hint at some harrowing past or some dark secret or some catalytic moment that changed everything and then show it in episode like 8. I just think that's I'm tired of shows doing that. Like sometimes it works really well, but I think it's a trope they fall into too much now. Like there's just 8 million shows out there. Sometimes I don't have time to watch your entire dumb show. Like we wouldn't have watched Heels if we weren't doing the show, like so show me the thing you're going to do off the top. And that's why, even though it is season 2, I did like this episode, because I was like, okay, like now I'm seeing these characters, I'm seeing their interactions, I'm seeing why they care about each other, why they're all together, what they like about this. Like I'm so much more intrigued in them now than I was in season 1, because we're getting actual events that mattered, not just hinting at things and trusting us to go with you along this voyage.
Yeah, I mean, to start, I believe that what you're describing is probably a product of binge TV, where it's like, oh, if I got you for 1, I got you for 10. And so they can kind of take that liberty, and like the Netflix and all the bullshit out there. It's like, yeah, if you're going to commit to 1, you'll just keep going, just because it's habit now. And I can kind of like string you along a little bit more and kind of backload the important shit.
Even if it's just on in the background, even if you're not even watching it, like you'll just continue watching until it's over, probably.
Yeah, and I will say though that like the scene where they kind of do a time jump back to the day Tom Spade kills himself, and you see the Ace has the Georgia blanket over Georgia Bulldogs blanket, and I'm like, I kind of remembered, I put together, I'm like, oh wait, he was wearing that blanket the day he found his dad, and like that's how I thought it was a nice subtle touch of like, oh, we're back in this moment again, and we're gonna connect it with this like this connective tissue of like, him with the blanket. For what that's worth. I mean, that's not a reason to watch the show.
No, but it's a nice little visual touch. Like it's one of those small things that's like, it's easy, but it's a good thing to do. Like it adds, it shows that you're trying and you're connecting the dots and all that.
But also too, like I think you'll agree with this, is the fact that like, look, this show didn't really do a whole lot of work with regards to character motivations. Like you got like breadcrumbs, and then it was backloaded a lot of like pretext and a lot of character motivations, or like, if I was a wrestler and I found my father dead in the backyard. And yeah, that would fuck me up fundamentally. And like, I think we can all relate to that. But like, even taking that a step further in this first episode and kind of playing the seeds of like, Ace was always the one that was always protected in some way, and Jack kind of felt like this was his space with the dad, and really just getting into the dynamics between the brothers and the family more, which ultimately will drive the narrative forward and drive the show forward, and will I assume will make this redemption arc with one or both of them more meaningful, because we're learning about the day Ace started wrestling and why, and he was a wonder kid, but like at the same time, this isn't really his space, and just playing the seeds of discontent and resentment between the two. That obviously now that we have lived through the tissue moments and that
those famous tissue moments that everybody remembers.
Yeah, like now we kind of understand a little bit better why this guy's so pissed at his brother for something that, he was trying to better the business, but at the end of the day, he broke this guy's trust. And that, I think that's more illustrated having gone through season 2, episode 1, than anything that I saw in season 1.
Yeah, I was going to say, you probably shouldn't be holding on to that until your second season, on the chance that you don't get a second season, or, people lose interest and drop off. Like, maybe, I just think that's the kind of thing that you could stand a front load a little more. It doesn't have to be, I get that this episode we just watched, season 2, episode 1, can't be the pilot, but it could be episode 4, like it could be like there's a long history of episode 4s being like, okay, you're these characters a little well, now let's give you a little more meat, let's give you a little more substance there, as opposed to you got to know them and like them on a surface level. Here's a little deeper dive, and that wasn't Heels' style, and we'll see now if they're maybe they feel more comfortable. Who knows? I don't want to speculate about the fine creators of Heels and Mike O'Malley and all those lovely people. But yeah, I just wish it had moved a little differently and to get to this point.
So, I have my thoughts, but like now having taken because at first when we saw the Heels trailer, like, I guess we're gonna watch this, lol. But now that we're here, how do you feel? Do you feel like, okay, this feels like a good decision? Or is it like this show has a lot of work still left to do to really win me over?
Like I said, I think when you watch this next episode of season 2, you will be like, okay, there's maybe something here that I could sink my teeth into going forward. I think there's a couple good ways they can go with this story. In watching this episode where, they show the match, obviously it happened in the past in the Heels-averse, but they show the big post, the big memorial show and how it got enthusiasm going, which basically led to the promotion being revived. I think they haven't really touched a lot on a couple of angles that I think if the writers are wrestling fans, which they seem to be at points in season 1, I think there's some clear places to go. Like you sort of said, make it more digital. Like, are they going to start sinking to a lower common denominator or be more flashy? Like, oh my God, we got all these big YouTube views because of Crystal winning the title. Like, what a great, let's do more dumb shit that makes no sense because it just, pops a number on YouTube. That isn't money, but it's eyeballs, and we can pretend like it's getting us somewhere. Like, are they going to do something like that? Are they going to do stuff about just, the carrying of the momentum? Like when we were watching the blow off episode, it reminded me of One Night Stand, like, ECW's, which we've talked about in the show in detail, ECW's like amazing, return moment. And then it becomes, okay, what do you have for me after? Like, it's, you can book a one-off relatively easily comparatively, you can book a big show that is exciting. And then it's like, okay, but now that you're supposed to keep a storyline going from A to B to C to D, that's the part that's hard. That's where it's hard to draw fans. That's where it's hard to keep enthusiasm up. So like, I think there's stuff from both of those things they could potentially add to the show in a little more detail. And again, if they're going a more wrestling-y route and they decide to take either one of those, I think there's something there where I'd be even more intrigued to keep watching.
So, I agree with everything you said. I think there's a lot of different ways you can take this and make it better than palatable. Barely palatable TV.
Which basically was our review of season 1. I'm not sure if we put it in those terms, but that sounds right.
Yeah, I mean, we spent 40 minutes to more or less say it. No, but so there's two things that I think I would love to see more of, and you kind of you kind of hinted at the first part, which is like, let's draw from real life damn examples. Like, what does a cinematic match look like, and how can that fold in? Like, and not that like I want to see the Hardys episode. Like that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying though is like they can really craft this narrative, and they have a lot of source material to work from because there's so many real life examples of like independent wrestling that does interesting things that can improve the business or destroy the business. And it's like, let's like we see a little bit of that with dystopian wrestling, but it's very surface level. It has nothing to do with DWL, and the Duffy Wrestling could benefit from just like paralleling like life more than they already have. And secondly, like I kind of want to see a double turn between like Ace and keep want to see Ace and Gary, Ace and Ace and Jack.
A famous duo for sure, Ace and Gary.
I got my TV references; they're all over the place right now. But I would like to see a double turn where it's like you actually end up sympathizing with Ace, who was like more or less painted as like kind of a piece of shit. Like he had his redeeming moments, but ultimately he was a bad guy.
Yeah, like in the beginning of the season 1, he was like a cookie cutter asshole.
Right, and I want to see a scenario where we actually really root for him and start to hate Jack, and because ultimately he's the promoter. And I know he's like, again, he's supposed to be the Eric Taylor. He's not fucking Coach Eric Taylor.
You knew Eric Taylor. You watched Eric Taylor. He's no Eric Taylor.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I want to see this character kind of like devolve into a scumbag producer or a promoter like we all know exists in this world. Like, there's very few examples of promoters out there that aren't considered terrible scumbags.
Yeah, I would like to see him. I think, and these ideas dovetail very closely, like giving into his baser instincts, like tasting success and making bad choices, and like you said, we mentioned in our Heels season 1 episode, like we really thought the show was going to be about like Ace, like you said, was a big asshole, and it was like, is Ace going to become a heel? The name of the show seemed like it was sort of the driving idea behind it. Is he going to become a heel, embrace the idea of being a heel, and is that in turn going to help his professional career, help his personal life? Is he just going to tap into a part of himself that is productive in multiple ways, which is a wrestling thing that happens all the time. Like you realize that, like Dom Mysterio, as a modern example, like lazy ass babyface, boring Ray's son, and now he's the biggest shit eating heel in the world, and everyone loves him, and it's perfect. Like he's found that side of his character, and he's playing into it so hard, and it's just delightful. And it seemed like that was just such low hanging fruit for heels to do. Like it still shocks me a little bit that that's not a thing they did at all. And if that's not the way they're going, that's fine. But yeah, at this point, now that we're past that and we're almost sort of forgetting, I think the show would love if we forgot that Ace was an asshole. I don't think the show wants us to remember that at all, in my opinion. So maybe now we're going to do what you said. Maybe we're just going to have Ace be redeemed because whatever, who cares? Because Amell's better at playing the bad guy than he is anyway. Like I think Amell, he's in episode 2, he has a scene where he is being a jerk, and he's very good at being a jerk. Like I think that comes natural to him as well. So maybe this is another example of the logical stuff winning out, people's personalities bleeding into the show, and maybe that's the way they go. That just makes sense for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, just like we were saying in our last episode about Ace in season 1, it's like a good heel thinks that they're the hero and has convinced they're the hero, which is why like his resistance to be the heel only made him more of a heel, because he's like, no, everyone loves me. He's like, dude, just embrace the fact that everybody kind of hates you, actually. And his resistance, and then obviously Jack's like, intervention to kind of force us down this path anyway. made him a great heel because he always was kind of a dick in season 1. And so like playing a heel only made sense. Similar to if we are going this way with like Jack, you're right now he's like positioned to be the face and the hero and the protagonist of this story, but like it's so easy for him to be the antagonist too, because what he thinks he's doing best for his family and best for the organization and striving to the success that his father never saw, which they established in the first episode of season 2. It's so easy for him to fall victim to like very devilish ways, but under the guise of, I want to do this for the betterment of everybody, but really he's just making bad decisions and thus can transform into the antagonist that he kind of is. Very Walter White-esque, where it's like is this for Skylar? This is for Walt Jr. It's like, no, it's for you.
Yeah,
it's for you and your ego. And there could be a great moment where that all comes to fruition if we go that way. I mean, I
will say, when you watch episode 2, it seems like, and I'll just straight up tell you, it seems like the way we're going with Jack is he might be the one who leans into the idea that being a heel is fruitful for him. Like he might go with, it seems like he might go the Vince McMahon route, like Mr. McMahon route, where it's like, I'm the pretty boy, like as if Kerry Von Erich ever turned heel, and was like how hurtful that would be to the hometown crowd. It seems like he might be the one who's like, screw it, I'm going to be the bad guy now, because that'll sort of let me tap into some of the bad shit that I think in my head and sort of do every now and then. Maybe I'm going to get that out in the ring, and then we just need to find a protagonist who is pure of heart, who can sort of be my opponent. And you can probably guess who that might be. So you may remember her climbing a ladder.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah. So we'll see. I really don't know. That's the idea. It's an idea. It's maybe not the perfect idea, but it's something. Like it's just reworking what they could have done in season 1 and just retrofitting it and adding it to season 2 and just changing some of the names and faces. So who knows? We'll see.
Like they have I don't want to say a blank canvas, but they have a canvas to work with, and it's like
they have a lot of people who don't remember what happened in season 1. So yeah. They've like Men in Black memory wiped us by accident. So that does work to their benefit.
I mean, just like in wrestling, I forget what happened last week. So I mean, it might be great, but if it sucked, then I'll easily forget if you give me something good tomorrow.
Or if you recut your previously on heels to tell me something happened this way, even if it's not exactly the way it happens, I'd be like, sure, previously on heels sounds like the events that occurred before.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We are in the midst of a writer's strike, so I'll take what I can get when it comes to like TV and fictionalized wrestling, I guess. But I think that's more of a state of media in general and less of a state of how good heels is.
Yes.
But I hope to be surprised. I mean, sometimes a show puts out whatever season 1 and then they improve. And then there's a lot of times where shows put out the best shit they got into season 1. And then you realize that, oh shit, this showrunner or this writer had just one good idea that they executed really well, and now we're kind of just retreading like Hero season 2, like Mr. Mr. Robot season. Like I could keep going on and on and on about shows that just like, oh, what a great idea you had for one season. That's called a miniseries. That's not called a serial like season over season drama.
But I think we'll both agree that heels did nothing in season 1 to indicate that was their best and only shit.
Right.
I don't think we can recall a single moment where we're like, oh man, heels has really peaked. Like there are a lot of valleys. So if they can find a couple peaks, I think that will just raise their profile considerably.
Right. And what's happening with Rooster?
Oh, I have no idea.
Where are we going with Rooster?
Rooster's pretty. The first 2 episodes have been very top heavy. It's been big names only, so kind of okay with that. I think James Harrison is gone. Remember James Harrison was in season 1?
Oh, that was the other guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe he is not on the show anymore. So they may have thinned the pack, but on purpose, or maybe he's gotten. I don't know what he's up to, but I get the sense that maybe they're gonna trim it a little bit, which I think is good. I think we don't need to know what everybody's up to. We can have 6 main characters. That seems like plenty.
I'm not complaining.
It's not like Rooster was good. Barely. I had to look up his name, as I think you did. So
that tribute show was a 2-card show.
Yeah. Yes. I'm sure there was an undercard. We just fast forward right through it, right?
Was there? I mean, that locker room was pretty empty.
I don't know. Well, I guess for Phil Brooks, we didn't even talk about Phil Brooks on this episode.
He had one line.
He's back though. He's in episode 2. He appears to be like, maybe not in every episode, but he appears to be like on the show. Again.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, I mean, he had nothing to do, so.
Didn't he blame Heels for something recently?
Daddy, I can't keep track of what Phil Brooks says or
Right.
does, nor do I want to. But he's on Heels, and he's around, and his name's Ricky Rabies, so. He says milk titty in episode 2, so you'll be, not to spoil that too, but you'll get to a point where he says milk titty.
So we don't get to see AJ Lee in season?
No, you told me that she is on the show. I did not know that. That's news to me. We should try and contact her reps and see if she'll come on this show.
I mean, she didn't come on when we reached out about her book.
Yeah,
so.
but now we've been around for so much longer and have had no real success, so maybe she'll come now.
And to be fair, since the book, this is the only thing she's really done other than maybe write a comic book. So yeah, maybe
she's probably in SAG, so she actually probably can't come on because of the strike. So we could talk about it. We actually should reach out to people now because now they have nothing to do. Like they might as well talk about their books, right?
Yeah.
If you can talk about your books, that's not WGA, that's not SAG, that's totally unrelated.
Well, why would promotion for a show that
you can't? No, you can't. If you listen to podcasts with actors on, they can't discuss their projects.
Oh, I guess because that goes back to the studio.
Yeah, I think it adds to their value, I believe. I don't know the wording exactly, but I know if you go on a podcast, you can go on the show. You just cannot talk about what you cannot go on to promote something.
I never wrote a book before, but would I want to talk about a book that I wrote like 7 years ago? I don't know. I mean, maybe. I mean, it's a good book. I would love to.
I'm just figuring she probably was going to go on some shows and talk about Heels, and now those are all kiboshed. So it's like, well, I got to do something. Got to fill those hours.
Sorry, everybody. You just accidentally walked into a pre-production meeting for Awesome Truth, but this is how we figure it out.
We spitball. We throw shit at the wall. Well, we'll leave that for.
Truly us throwing shit at the wall. Hey, let's reach out to a wrestler who wrote a book a century ago.
Well, we'll leave that for a later conversation. But Heels is out now. It's on the Starz app. So if you have Starz, watch Heels. Give it a shot. Well, we will catch up over the course of the next couple weeks, months. I believe this season ends in mid-September. So I'd say we'll be back in a month, maybe 2, and we will talk about, the stuff we talked about here. We'll recap and we'll revisit all these episodes, and we'll see if Heels truly was worth watching.
Yeah, I mean, I have slight hope, but got to late September we put out the episode of the second half of this, and we're like, nope,
Heels was
just
bad.
Kidding.
Heels was bad. Yeah. Well, we're gonna find it either way because that's the Awesome Truth way. Is we dig through the depths and we watch the shows and read the books and we tell you about them. So you will hear from us again real soon on Heels. And again, it's on Starz. Give it a watch if you liked season 1. If you want to hear us talk about Heels more, you can find our old Heels episodes in our archives at awesometruth.libsyn.com. You can find all of our new episodes, subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that stuff on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere podcasts are delivered. And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at awesometruthpod. Well, good to talk Heels. Good. I don't want to say great, but I'm excited for you to watch episode 2 and text me because I think you may also. There's one scene in particular where I was like, okay, this seems like it's going somewhere. Like I like this idea a lot. It's silly. It's exactly what a independent league should do. Independent wrestling promotion trying to make a name for itself. I just think there's a nugget there that I really hope they build upon.
Great. For the record, everybody, I want to like Heels. I really want to like this show.
You don't have to. Like, we didn't like Young Rock at all. Wrestling shows are allowed to be crap. The odds are they're probably going to be crap.
Yeah, but I want to like this show. I want to like things that involve wrestling. I want to like these things. So I just don't be surprised if I hate it.
No. No one should be surprised because it's not great. But, like you said, things can get better. So we will find out in the weeks to come whether Heels is better or whether it is slowly going to go away and never be talked about ever again.
Cautiously optimistic.
There you go. That's the way to be. Thank you all so much for listening, everyone. And remember, the truth will set you free.